In the modern world of high productivity, late-night work shifts, competitive sports, and endless digital entertainment, energy has become a commodity. The global energy drink industry, now worth tens of billions of dollars annually, has positioned itself as the quick solution for fatigue, the shortcut to alertness, and the chemical boost that modern life seems to demand. Yet behind the flashy cans and bold slogans lies a story of health risks, clever marketing, and an industry that thrives on pushing human bodies to the edge. To understand the truth about energy drinks, we must start at the beginning, where they came from, why they became so popular, and how they transformed from niche products into global icons of modern culture. The origins of energy drinks can be traced back to Asia. In post-war Japan during the 1960s, the company Taisho introduced a drink called Lipovitan D. It wasn't marketed with neon lights or extreme sports, but instead as a tonic for salarymen, overworked office employees expected to endure grueling hours in a booming economy. The drink contained taurine, caffeine, and B vitamins, setting the blueprint for what would later become a global phenomenon. In Thailand in 1976, a pharmacist named Chaleo Yovidya created Krating Dang, literally, Red Bull aimed at truck drivers and laborers who needed to stay awake during long shifts. Its blend of sugar, caffeine, taurine, and other stimulants was marketed as a working-class elixir, not a trendy lifestyle product. The true globalization of energy drinks began in the 1980s, when Austrian entrepreneur Dietrich Mateschitz encountered Krating Dang during a business trip in Asia. Recognizing its potential for Western markets, he partnered with Chaleo, adapted the formula to European tastes, and rebranded it under a bold, sleek identity, Red Bull. With its now iconic silver and blue can, aggressive marketing strategies, and extreme sports sponsorships, Red Bull took the world by storm in the 1990s. What had once been a niche pick-me-up for workers became a symbol of youth culture, daring stunts, and high performance. By the early 2000s, Red Bull's success sparked a wave of imitators and competitors. Monster, Rockstar, 5 Hour Energy, and dozens of other brands flooded the market, each claiming to offer superior energy, sharper focus, and better performance. They sponsored music festivals, gaming tournaments, skateboarding events, and even professional athletes. The message was clear: drinking an energy drink was not just about staying awake. It was about belonging to a culture of intensity, rebellion, and pushing limits. But this meteoric rise did not come without consequences. Medical researchers, health organizations, and doctors began to notice patterns among young people and athletes consuming these drinks in large quantities. Emergency rooms reported spikes in cases of irregular heartbeats, anxiety attacks, and caffeine overdoses. Stories began to emerge of college students collapsing after consuming multiple cans in a short time, or teenagers mixing energy drinks with alcohol and suffering dangerous, sometimes fatal consequences. The marketing of energy drinks intentionally blurred the line between lifestyle branding and medical claims. These drinks were promoted as performance enhancers, but few regulations required companies to disclose the long-term effects of consuming such high doses of caffeine and sugar. While soda companies were regulated and labeled energy drink, companies marketed themselves in a grey area, not quite a soft drink, not quite a supplement. This allowed them to avoid stricter oversight, even as consumption rates among teenagers skyrocketed. Today, energy drinks are consumed by millions daily, from truck drivers on long hauls to high school students cramming for exams, from athletes looking for an edge to office workers powering through deadlines. The industry has diversified with sugar-free versions, pre-workout energy shots, and hybrid products combining caffeine with herbal extracts, vitamins, or even CBD. Yet despite all the variety, the core formula remains the same: caffeine, sugar, and a cocktail of additives designed to stimulate the nervous system. The question is, at what cost? Health professionals are increasingly concerned about the addictive potential of these beverages. Unlike coffee or tea, which are centuries-old cultural staples consumed in moderation, energy drinks are engineered for maximum impact and rapid consumption. A single can often contains the caffeine equivalent of 3 or 4 cups of coffee, combined with sugar levels that rival soda. When consumed quickly, this delivers a jolt that shocks the system. It may keep you awake, But it also puts immense strain on the heart, kidneys, and brain. Marketing plays a central role in masking these dangers. Glossy commercials and viral stunts portray energy drinks as fun, harmless, and even aspirational. The industry's sponsorship of extreme sports and e-gaming has successfully tied consumption to identity and self-expression. To say no to an energy drink in these contexts is to risk being left out of the action. But the cracks in this narrative are starting to show. Lawsuits, health warnings, and mounting evidence from scientific studies are forcing governments, schools, and medical organizations to ask serious questions about the regulation of these products. In some countries, restrictions have been placed on the sale of energy drinks to minors. In others, warning labels are now mandatory. Yet the global demand remains high, driven by a combination of aggressive marketing and a society increasingly dependent on stimulation to keep up with its pace. In understanding the truth about energy drinks, one thing becomes clear: they are not just beverages. They are cultural artifacts of a world that values productivity, speed, and performance over rest, balance, and natural health. To expose their hidden risks, we must journey deeper into the science behind the formulas, the corporate strategies that shape their popularity, and the human consequences of their widespread use. The story of energy drinks is not just about what's inside the can. It's about what's inside the system that allowed them to flourish. And as we peel back the layers of this story, we will discover a disturbing reality, one that affects not only the individuals who consume these drinks, but also the global health landscape at large. The rise of energy drinks tells us as much about ourselves as it does about the companies selling them. It reveals our desperation for shortcuts, our willingness to sacrifice long-term health for short-term gain, and our vulnerability to clever advertising. In many ways, the industry has mastered the art of giving us exactly what we think we want, while hiding what we most need to know. The world is running on caffeine, sugar, and stimulants. But is it running toward progress, or running headlong into a public health crisis? This is the question we must now explore. When you crack open an energy drink, the hiss of carbonation is followed by a rush of sweetness, fizz, and sometimes an almost medicinal aftertaste. It feels like a surge of energy is coursing through you within minutes, sharpening your senses, making your heart beat faster, and lifting the fog of fatigue. But what exactly is happening inside your body when you drink one? To understand the health risks, we need to break down the ingredients inside the can, the chemical cocktail that powers the energy drink industry. At the core of every energy drink is caffeine, the world's most widely consumed psychoactive substance. It works by blocking adenosine, a neurotransmitter in the brain responsible for signaling fatigue. Normally, as you stay awake, adenosine builds up in your brain, slowing you down and urging you toward rest. Caffeine steps in like a clever imposter, binding to adenosine receptors and tricking your body into believing it's not tired. The result: temporary alertness, increased concentration, and a rush of energy. But unlike a cup of coffee, which might contain around 120 milligrams of caffeine, a single can of some energy drinks can pack 200 to 300 milligrams or more, and many consumers drink more than one in a sitting. The caffeine surge spikes heart rate and blood pressure, placing stress on the cardiovascular system. For young people and those with underlying health conditions, this can trigger palpitations, arrhythmias, and in extreme cases, cardiac arrest. The second key component is sugar. Energy drinks are notorious for their high sugar content, often containing as much as 50 grams in a single can, more than double the recommended daily intake for an adult. Sugar delivers an immediate burst of glucose to the bloodstream, spiking insulin and providing a quick fuel source for the body. This is why energy drinks often feel like they work instantly. The sugar rush combines with caffeine to create a powerful jolt. But the high is short-lived. Within an hour or two, blood sugar levels crash, leaving the consumer feeling more fatigued than before. This sugar crash often drives people to reach for another can, trapping them in a cycle of dependency. Over time, high sugar intake contributes to obesity, type 2 diabetes, tooth decay, and metabolic syndrome risks rarely mentioned in glossy advertising campaigns. Then there are the additives, a complex blend of substances marketed as energy boosters or performance enhancers. Chief among them is taurine, an amino acid naturally found in the body, particularly in the brain, eyes, and heart. While taurine has roles in regulating hydration and supporting nervous system function in energy drinks, It is added in doses far exceeding what the body typically produces or needs. Studies remain inconclusive about taurine's effects when combined with high caffeine levels, but researchers worry that it may exacerbate the stimulant's impact on the cardiovascular system. Another common additive is guarana, a plant extract from the Amazon that contains caffeine. On labels, guarana may appear as a separate ingredient, but what many consumers don't realize is that it adds even more caffeine on top of what is already listed. This hidden caffeine can push total intake to dangerous levels, increasing the risk of overdose symptoms like tremors, nausea, severe anxiety, and irregular heartbeat. Energy drinks also contain B vitamins, B6, B12, niacin, riboflavin, often in amounts that far exceed daily recommended values. Companies market these vitamins as essential for energy metabolism, implying that their drinks provide a nutritional benefit. In reality, while B vitamins help the body convert food into energy, they do not provide energy themselves. In large doses, some B vitamins like niacin can cause unpleasant side effects, such as skin-flushing gastrointestinal distress, and in rare cases, liver toxicity. Another frequently used ingredient is ginseng, marketed as an adaptogen that reduces fatigue and boosts endurance. But scientific evidence for ginseng's effectiveness remains weak, and in combination with stimulants, it may strain the body's stress response system. Finally, there are artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives designed to make the drinks visually appealing and shelf-stable. While they may not directly contribute to the energy effect, some of these additives have been linked to allergic reactions, hyperactivity in children, and other potential health risks. When combined, these ingredients create a powerful stimulant effect on the central nervous system. For healthy adults consuming moderate amounts, the risks may seem minimal, but for teenagers, young adults, and individuals with undiagnosed heart conditions, the effects can be catastrophic. Medical professionals have documented cases where otherwise healthy adolescents collapsed after consuming several energy drinks in a short period. Autopsies revealed caffeine toxicity as the cause. Emergency departments report increasing visits linked to energy drink consumption, ranging from panic attacks and seizures to severe dehydration and kidney problems. What makes this especially troubling is the speed of absorption. Unlike coffee or tea, which are often sipped, slowly energy drinks are designed to be consumed quickly. Their sweetness and carbonation encourage rapid drinking, delivering a concentrated dose of stimulants to the bloodstream in minutes. The body is overwhelmed, forced to cope with sudden surges in heart rate, blood pressure, and blood sugar levels. And the effects don't end there. The sleep cycle is one of the first casualties of heavy energy drink consumption. By blocking adenosine, caffeine delays the onset of sleep and reduces the amount of deep restorative rest. Even when individuals eventually fall asleep, the quality of their rest is compromised. This leads to a vicious cycle. Sleep deprivation creates fatigue. Fatigue drives the consumption of more energy drinks, and the dependence deepens. What's more, many consumers mix energy drinks with alcohol, a practice particularly common among young adults and college students. The stimulant effects of caffeine mask the depressant effects of alcohol, making drinkers feel less intoxicated than they truly are. This leads to riskier behavior, higher alcohol consumption, and increased chances of accidents, injuries, and alcohol poisoning. Studies have shown that individuals who mix energy drinks with alcohol are more likely to engage in dangerous activities, such as drunk driving, unprotected sex, and violent altercations. Yet despite this mounting evidence, the industry continues to frame its products as safe, everyday consumables. Clever packaging, vague health claims, and sponsorship deals with athletes create the illusion that energy drinks are just another beverage, no different from a sports drink or a soda. The reality is that they are far more potent, far riskier, and far less regulated. By pulling apart the science behind energy drinks, a troubling picture emerges. These are not harmless pick-me-ups, but powerful chemical cocktails designed to maximize stimulation at the expense of long-term health. They exploit biology, tricking the brain into ignoring fatigue and masking the body's natural signals for rest and recovery. And as we'll see, the consequences of ignoring those signals can be devastating. The statistics are alarming enough: rising hospital visits, cardiac emergencies, and cases of caffeine overdose. But behind every number lies a human story. To truly understand the dangers of energy drinks, we need to step out of the abstract and look at the lives that have been irreversibly altered, and in some cases ended by these beverages. In 2012, a 14-year-old girl named Anaïs Fournier drank 2 cans of a popular energy drink within 24 hours. That added up to nearly 500 milligrams of caffeine on top of the chocolate and soda she had consumed earlier in the day. Hours later, Anaïs went into cardiac arrest. Doctors rushed to save her, but she never regained consciousness. The coroner's report listed cardiac arrhythmia due to caffeine toxicity as the cause of death. Her parents sued the company, sparking national headlines and a wave of public concern. Yet despite the outcry, sales of the drink continued to rise. Anaïs's story is not unique. Across the United States, Europe, and beyond, similar cases have been reported. In Ireland, a young man collapsed during a basketball game after consuming several cans in a single evening. In the US, a Marine Corps recruit suffered a fatal heart attack after downing multiple energy drinks during training exercises. Emergency rooms worldwide report an uptick in cases of heart palpitations, seizures, dehydration, and panic attacks directly tied to energy drink consumption. Medical journals have documented these crises extensively. A 2014 study in the journal Pediatrics revealed that energy drink-related emergency room visits in the US had doubled in just 4 years, with nearly half involving adolescents aged 12 to 17. The cases weren't always extreme overdoses. Sometimes they were the result of just 1 or 2 cans consumed on an empty stomach, combined with stress, dehydration, or physical exertion. For many families, these tragedies feel like ambushes. Parents allow their children to buy energy drinks under the impression that they are no more dangerous than soda. After all, they're sold in convenience stores, promoted at sporting events, and rarely carry warning labels that reflect the true risks. But behind the branding lies a product far more potent than most realize. The crisis isn't limited to young people. Adults who regularly consume energy drinks are also paying the price. Take the story of Lance, a 26-year-old construction worker in Texas. Facing long shifts and heavy labor, Lance relied on 3 to 4 energy drinks a day to stay alert. Over time, he began experiencing insomnia, migraines, and anxiety. One afternoon, after downing 2 cans in quick succession, he collapsed at work. Doctors diagnosed him with an arrhythmia triggered by chronic caffeine overload. Though he survived, he was warned that his heart had been permanently weakened. There are also stories of dependency individuals who cannot get through the day without multiple cans, who wake up in the middle of the night to drink one just to keep going. The addiction cycle is insidious. The more fatigued the body becomes from lack of rest, the more it craves the quick fix of caffeine and sugar. For some, quitting energy drinks produces withdrawal symptoms eerily similar to drugs: headaches, irritability, depression, and extreme lethargy. The dangers extend beyond the cardiovascular system. In one documented case, a man in the United Kingdom developed liver failure after consuming an average of 4 to 5 cans daily for months. Doctors traced the damage to an overload of niacin, vitamin B3, a common ingredient in energy drinks. He was lucky enough to survive after a liver transplant, but his life was permanently changed. Another overlooked risk lies in mental health. Studies have linked high energy drink consumption to increased rates of anxiety, stress, and even depression. The intense highs followed by crushing lows can destabilize mood and exacerbate underlying psychological conditions. Teenagers whose brains are still developing are especially vulnerable. Some experts believe that energy drinks may act as a gateway to stronger stimulants as users build tolerance and seek greater highs. Perhaps the most dangerous practice, however, is mixing energy drinks with alcohol. In college towns across America, bars serve cocktails like vodka Red Bull as though they are harmless party staples. But the combination of a stimulant and a depressant is a neurological time bomb. Caffeine dulls the perception of drunkenness, causing people to underestimate how intoxicated they are. This leads to binge drinking accidents and poor decision-making. One tragic example is the case of Michael, a 21-year-old student who spent a night out drinking heavily mixed with energy drinks. Believing he was less drunk than he actually was, Michael drove home and never made it. His car crashed into a barrier at high speed, killing him instantly. Toxicology reports showed his blood alcohol content was over twice the legal limit, but his friends insisted he had seemed fine just hours before. Stories like these expose a pattern. Energy drinks are not just beverages. They are powerful stimulants often consumed recklessly, with consequences ranging from hospitalization to death. Yet the industry continues to dismiss these tragedies as isolated incidents, anomalies unrelated to their products. The truth is more unsettling. These cases are not accidents. They are predictable outcomes of a product engineered for maximum stimulation, marketed to vulnerable populations, and consumed without sufficient warnings. Behind the neon colors and edgy slogans lies a reality that is claiming lives. As the evidence mounts, so too does the pressure on regulators and health authorities to act. But as we'll uncover next, industry lobbying, corporate spin, and billions of dollars in profit ensure that real reform remains elusive. To understand why energy drinks remain so widely available and under-regulated despite mounting health concerns, we must pull back the curtain on the corporations behind them. At the surface, energy drink companies project an image of excitement, vitality, and rebellion. Their ads are plastered on extreme sports racing cars, music festivals, and even university campuses. But behind that flashy exterior lies a sophisticated machine of corporate spin lobbying and influence, designed to keep regulators at bay and consumers hooked. Take Red Bull, for example. It is not just a drink, it is a lifestyle brand. By associating itself with adrenaline-fueled activities like cliff diving, motocross, and skydiving from the edge of space, Red Bull has built an empire worth billions. Its slogan, "Red Bull gives you wings," is so deeply ingrained in popular culture that it's easy to forget the drink is at its core a high caffeine stimulant with questionable health consequences. When challenged in court over misleading advertising, the company quietly paid out a settlement but continued to grow its influence. Monster Energy and Rockstar followed similar strategies, embedding themselves in youth culture through music festivals, video games, and esports. The goal wasn't just to sell drinks, it was to normalize them, to make chugging an energy drink as socially acceptable as drinking soda. The message was clear: energy drinks aren't just safe, they're essential to fun, performance, and identity. But when health authorities began to raise alarms, these companies didn't back down. Instead, they mobilized powerful lobbying campaigns to protect their profits. In the United States, the American Beverage Association, ABA, funded by soda giants and energy drink companies alike, has spent millions lobbying against stricter regulations on caffeine content, warning labels, and sales restrictions to minors. Their argument is predictable: energy drinks are no different than coffee and adults should be free to make their own choices. This comparison to coffee, however, is deeply misleading. While a standard cup of coffee contains 80–120 mg of caffeine, energy drinks often include multiple stimulants on top of caffeine, guarana, taurine, ginseng, creating a stacking effect that intensifies the body's reaction. Moreover, coffee culture doesn't glamorize binge consumption in the way energy drinks do. Coffee isn't sold in neon cans with edgy names like Death Adder or Liquid Rage, nor is it pushed at teenagers with promises of athletic superiority or gaming dominance. Lobbyists also lean heavily on self-regulation as a defense. They argue that the industry already provides guidance on consumption, that warning labels exist, and that adults should supervise their children. But a closer look at these labels reveals the truth: they are vague, often buried in fine print, and far less visible than the bold promises of energy and vitality splashed across the can. In practice, these labels do little to deter consumption, especially among younger audiences. When lawsuits emerge, often filed by families who've lost children or loved ones to caffeine-related heart failure, the companies deploy an army of lawyers and PR firms. Their strategy is consistent: deny responsibility, blame the individual, and emphasize personal choice. The narrative is crafted to shift focus away from the product and onto the consumer. Our drink is safe if consumed responsibly. It's the same playbook once used by the tobacco industry and later by big soda when challenged over sugar and obesity. Internationally, the story repeats itself. In the European Union, proposals to ban the sale of energy drinks to minors have faced intense pushback from beverage companies. In the United Kingdom, the government announced plans to restrict sales to children under 16 after studies showed links between energy drinks and hyperactivity, poor sleep and obesity. Yet even there, implementation has been slowed by lobbying pressure and concerns about economic impact on businesses. The influence of these companies extends far beyond politics. They also shape scientific research. Many studies that downplay the dangers of energy drinks are quietly funded by the very companies whose products are under scrutiny. Industry-funded research often emphasizes moderate consumption, compares drinks to coffee, and glosses over extreme cases as statistical outliers. This creates confusion in the public mind, giving companies room to argue that the science isn't settled. Meanwhile, the advertising machine continues at full throttle. Sponsorship deals with athletes, influencers, and musicians reinforce the brand's cultural dominance. Social media campaigns encourage viral stunts and challenges, further embedding energy drinks in youth culture. For teenagers and young adults, the line between fun and danger blurs. They don't see a stimulant in a can, they see freedom, adventure, and rebellion. This deliberate corporate camouflage is what makes the energy drink industry so dangerous. It hides behind lifestyle marketing, deflects criticism with coffee comparisons, and shields itself with lobbying and legal defenses. It sells not just drinks, but an identity, making it harder for young consumers to recognize the risks. And while regulators debate and corporations profit, the casualties continue to mount. Emergency rooms keep filling. Families keep losing loved ones. The industry keeps growing. But is there a breaking point? Can the cycle of consumption and denial continue forever? Or will the mounting evidence finally force governments to act? As the evidence of health risks linked to energy drinks grew, governments around the world began to grapple with an uncomfortable question: should these products be regulated more strictly or even banned altogether for younger consumers? The answers varied, but one thing was clear: the fight between public health advocates and the energy drink industry was becoming global. In Scandinavia, some of the earliest concerns were raised. Denmark and Norway once banned Red Bull entirely, citing health risks tied to its high caffeine and taurine content. France followed suit, blocking sales of the drink for over a decade. But after the European Union pressured countries to open their markets to standardized products, these bans were overturned, with companies using EU trade laws to argue for free circulation of goods. The industry had scored a major victory, but the seed of doubt was planted. Even as Red Bull and its competitors returned to store shelves, the public's trust had been shaken. In Germany, the government ordered a study after the sudden deaths of several young adults who had consumed multiple cans of energy drinks. The findings showed that high doses could increase the risk of heart arrhythmias, especially when combined with alcohol or physical exertion. Though full bans weren't implemented, the research spurred stricter labeling requirements, warning consumers about potential health consequences. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, energy drinks became a subject of fierce debate. Teachers reported that students were arriving to school jittery, restless, and unable to focus after drinking cans of Monster or Rockstar for breakfast. Health officials flagged links between excessive consumption and obesity, sleep problems, and hyperactivity in children. In 2019, the government announced plans to restrict sales of energy drinks to those under 16. The move was widely supported by medical organizations, but business lobbies and retail groups pushed back, warning of economic fallout. Years later, enforcement remains inconsistent, a reflection of how difficult it is to balance public health with corporate influence. Across the Atlantic in Canada, regulators took a different approach. The country began classifying energy drinks not as soft drinks, but as natural health products. This meant companies were required to cap caffeine levels and include clearer warnings about daily consumption limits. In addition, the government placed restrictions on marketing that targeted children. While these measures stopped short of outright bans, they represented one of the stronger attempts at consumer protection in the Western world. But perhaps the most dramatic battles have unfolded in developing nations, where the energy drink market has grown fastest in recent years. In Africa, Latin America, and Asia, companies aggressively promote their products as affordable energy boosters in regions where long working hours and limited resources make stimulants appealing. These markets, however, also have weaker regulatory systems, making populations more vulnerable. Reports of sudden deaths linked to energy drinks have surfaced in countries like Mexico, India, and South Africa, sparking grassroots campaigns for restrictions. In Lithuania and Latvia, however, a bold step was taken. Both countries banned the sale of energy drinks to minors under 18, citing studies that linked heavy consumption to anxiety, cardiovascular stress, and declining academic performance. This move was applauded by health experts, but condemned by industry leaders who argued that young people would simply obtain drinks illegally or switch to coffee. Despite the criticism, the bans remain in place, making the Baltic states pioneers in energy drink regulation. Even the United States, often slower to regulate food and beverage products, has not been immune to controversy. While no nationwide ban exists, individual schools and colleges have prohibited energy drinks from campus vending machines. In certain states, bills have been introduced to restrict sales to minors, though most have stalled under heavy lobbying pressure. The Food and Drug Administration (FDA) has acknowledged the risks, but continues to treat energy drinks as dietary supplements, a classification that allows them to escape the stricter oversight imposed on drugs. The global picture reveals a stark reality: there is no consensus. In some countries, energy drinks are treated as dangerous substances requiring strict oversight. In others, they are marketed freely with governments hesitant to intervene. The inconsistency benefits the corporations, allowing them to adapt marketing strategies region by region while claiming compliance with local laws. But beneath this fragmented landscape lies a deeper conflict, one that mirrors past public health battles with tobacco, alcohol, and sugary drinks. On one side are health officials, educators, and parents calling for tighter controls to protect young people. On the other are billion-dollar corporations backed by lawyers, lobbyists, and global marketing machines determined to keep their products as widely accessible as possible. And yet regulation alone may not be the solution. Even in places where restrictions exist, the cultural allure of energy drinks remains powerful. The branding, the sponsorships, the sense of rebellion and freedom, all these ensure that demand persists, even in the face of warnings. The question then is not just how governments regulate, but how societies change perceptions. Can energy drinks be stripped of their glamorous image? Or are they destined to follow the path of tobacco, a product once celebrated, but eventually recognized as a public health crisis? By now, it is clear that energy drinks are more than just sugary sodas with a caffeine kick. They are engineered products designed to stimulate the brain, hook consumers into repeat purchases, and create loyalty not only to the brand, but to the feeling they produce. The question is, are energy drinks addictive? On the surface, caffeine is the obvious culprit. Caffeine is the most widely consumed psychoactive substance in the world, found in coffee, tea, and soda. But what makes energy drinks different is the cocktail effect: caffeine combined with sugar, taurine, guarana, and other stimulants. Together, these compounds work on the brain in ways that amplify not just alertness, but dependency. The caffeine mechanism. Inside the brain, caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, the chemical messengers responsible for telling your body that it's time to rest. With those receptors silenced, the body doesn't feel tired even when it should. At the same time, caffeine triggers the release of dopamine, the same feel-good neurotransmitter activated by substances like nicotine or cocaine, though to a lesser degree. This dopamine surge reinforces the idea that consuming caffeine is pleasurable, making the brain crave it again and again. When consumed occasionally, the body adapts. But with daily use, as with people who drink multiple energy drinks per day, the brain recalibrates, demanding higher doses to achieve the same effect. This tolerance leads to a vicious cycle: more drinks, more stimulation, and more dependency. The sugar factor. Caffeine, however, is only half the story. The sugar content in many energy drinks is staggering. A single 16-ounce can of Monster can contain over 50 grams of sugar, more than double the daily recommended limit. Sugar, like caffeine, manipulates the brain's reward pathways. It causes rapid spikes in blood glucose, followed by crashes that leave the consumer feeling drained and irritable. The fastest solution: another energy drink. This spike and crash loop traps consumers in a cycle of constant consumption. Over time, it contributes to weight gain, insulin resistance, and even type 2 diabetes. But in the short term, it keeps people hooked, chasing the high and avoiding the low. The psychological hooks. Beyond chemistry, there is psychology. Energy drinks are marketed not as beverages, but as identities. They are tied to images of strength, rebellion, and belonging. For many teenagers and young adults, cracking open a can of Monster or Red Bull is not about the taste, it's about signaling who they are. The drink becomes a badge of toughness, a membership into a subculture that values risk-taking and late-night endurance. Psychologists call this associative conditioning. Over time, the positive experiences, hanging out with friends, staying awake for a party, performing well in a game, become linked with the drink itself. The brain doesn't just crave caffeine, it craves the experiences and identity that come with it. Withdrawal and dependence. If energy drinks were harmless, walking away from them would be easy. But try asking a daily consumer to stop cold turkey. The results are telling: headaches, irritability, fatigue, and even flu-like symptoms. These are the classic signs of withdrawal, proof that the body has become dependent on the product. For some, this dependency escalates into full-blown addiction. Cases have been reported of individuals consuming 10, even 12 cans a day, unable to function without them. Their bodies wired to expect constant stimulation, collapse without it. In extreme instances, dependency has led to hospitalization and even death when individuals consume dangerous levels of caffeine without realizing it. The silent addiction. Perhaps the most alarming fact is that energy drink addiction hides in plain sight. Unlike alcohol or hard drugs, energy drinks are legal, cheap, and socially accepted. Parents buy them for their kids. Teachers see them in classrooms. Athletes promote them on television. The danger doesn't feel like danger until it's too late. This normalization makes energy drink addiction harder to combat. People don't think of themselves as addicted when they reach for a Red Bull every morning. Yet biologically, their brains may be just as dependent as someone hooked on nicotine. The long-term consequences. The long-term consequences of sustained addiction are only now becoming clear. Studies suggest that chronic overuse of caffeine and sugar can rewire the brain's reward circuits, making individuals more prone to anxiety, depression, and even other substance addictions later in life. Cardiologists warn that prolonged strain on the heart from repeated stimulation could contribute to premature heart disease. And perhaps most chilling is this: the youngest consumers are the most vulnerable. Adolescents' brains are still developing, particularly in regions that govern decision-making and impulse control. Introducing high doses of caffeine and sugar during these critical years may set the stage for lifelong struggles with addiction and mental health. The picture that emerges is not one of occasional indulgence, but of a carefully crafted dependency cycle. Energy drinks are not just beverages. They are engineered traps, and millions are caught in them without realizing it. Energy drinks are not simply beverages. They are products born of a carefully orchestrated industry playbook. At the heart of this story lies a corporate strategy as aggressive as the drinks themselves, one that combines psychological manipulation, scientific distortion, and cultural infiltration to ensure that consumers keep buying, keep drinking, and keep depending. The science of selling stimulation. From the very beginning, companies like Red Bull, Monster, and Rockstar understood they weren't just selling a product, they were selling an experience. Unlike soda or coffee, which had established roles in daily life, energy drinks had to carve out their own identity. And so the corporations turned to lifestyle branding. Red Bull's slogan, "Gives you wings," didn't mention taste, nutrition, or even energy. Instead, it promised transformation. It told consumers that this can of liquid wasn't just caffeine and sugar. It was freedom, excitement, and possibility. The message was psychological. You don't drink Red Bull to quench your thirst. You drink it to become more than yourself. Monster followed suit, aligning itself with extreme sports tattoos and rebellion. Its iconic claw logo was designed to look like a beast, ripping through the can, appealing to adrenaline seekers and those who wanted to project toughness. The drinks were packaged as edgy, dangerous, and anti-establishment, even as the companies behind them quietly partnered with some of the largest corporations in the world. The targeting of youth. One of the darkest strategies employed by these companies is their deliberate targeting of teenagers and young adults. Why? Because youth represent both the most impressionable demographic and the most profitable long-term investment. Hook a 15-year-old on energy drinks, and you may have a customer for decades. Advertising campaigns flood social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, where young audiences spend their time. Sponsorships in esports gaming tournaments and music festivals reinforce the idea that energy drinks are essential companions to entertainment and social life. The irony is chilling. While many governments ban alcohol and tobacco advertising to minors, energy drinks, which pose serious health risks to young people, remain aggressively promoted to them under the guise of fun and lifestyle. Corporate capture of sports. Energy drinks found their most potent marketing weapon in sports. Red Bull became more than a beverage company. It became a media empire, buying soccer teams, Formula One racing teams, and sponsoring daredevil stunts that pushed human endurance to terrifying limits. The message was simple: if world-class athletes trust and use Red Bull, then surely it must be safe, even beneficial. The branding blurred the line between performance enhancement and recreation, normalizing extreme consumption. But behind the scenes, many athletes were not guzzling cans of Red Bull for their performance. Instead, the sponsorships were carefully staged illusions, logos on helmets, drinks on podiums meant to create the appearance of widespread use. Funding biased science. Corporations knew that eventually questions would arise about the safety of their products. To get ahead of the controversy, they funded scientific studies designed not to find the truth, but to obscure it. Industry-funded research often highlighted vague benefits of energy drinks, increased alertness, better reaction times, while downplaying the risks. Negative studies were quietly buried, while positive results were amplified through press releases and media campaigns. This playbook was not new. It had been perfected by Big Tobacco in the mid-20th century, then copied by Big Soda and Big Sugar. Now the energy drink industry was using it to create doubt, delay regulation, and protect profits, exploiting loopholes in regulation. In many countries, energy drinks fall into a regulatory grey zone, sometimes classified as soft drinks, sometimes as dietary supplements. This ambiguity allows companies to sidestep stricter rules on labeling, caffeine limits, and advertising. Take the United States. Unlike pharmaceuticals, where dosage must be clearly labeled and safety extensively tested, energy drink companies can hide behind vague ingredient lists and proprietary blends. Consumers rarely know exactly how much caffeine they're consuming, let alone how those ingredients interact with each other. This lack of transparency is not an accident, it is a deliberate strategy to avoid accountability. Shaping public perception. Perhaps the most insidious tactic is the normalization of energy drink culture. Red Bull doesn't just sell drinks, it produces movies, music, and extreme sports events. Monster doesn't just sell caffeine, it creates identities for young men who want to feel powerful, rebellious, and in control. Through these cultural infiltrations, energy drinks become more than products. They become symbols. And once a brand becomes a cultural symbol, regulation and criticism become harder. To criticize Red Bull isn't just to critique a drink, it's to critique a lifestyle that millions of people have emotionally invested in. The profits behind the strategy. The results of this strategy are staggering. Red Bull sold over 12 billion cans in 2023 alone, generating billions in revenue. Monster Beverage Corporation, once a small player, is now a Fortune 500 giant. Together, these companies form a global empire built on the illusion of power, vitality, and identity, all while hiding the very real health risks. And yet, despite mounting evidence of danger, despite hospitalizations and deaths, the industry shows no signs of slowing down. Instead, it continues to innovate stronger formulas, bigger cans, new markets, and more aggressive advertising. The corporations know the risks, they've read the studies, they've seen the lawsuits. But as long as the profits flow, the dangers can be managed or more accurately concealed. The question then is simple: if corporations refuse to act responsibly, who will hold them accountable? That is the battle we will explore in the final part of this story. The fight between public health advocates regulators, and an industry too powerful to stop easily. By the late 2010s, the consequences of energy drink consumption could no longer be ignored. Emergency rooms reported surging cases of arrhythmia seizures, dehydration, and even strokes linked to high caffeine intake. Young people, some as young as 12, were being admitted after consuming multiple cans in a short time. Behind the glossy advertising campaigns, the bodies were piling up, and the public began to demand answers. Whispers become outrage. The first cracks appeared in Europe, where countries like France and Norway temporarily banned the sale of Red Bull, citing health concerns. Although these bans were later overturned under pressure from industry lobbyists and EU trade regulations, they sparked a larger conversation. Should energy drinks be treated like any other soft drink, or should they be regulated like alcohol and tobacco? In the United States, lawsuits began to emerge. Families of young victims who had collapsed after consuming large amounts of energy drinks sued corporations accusing them of negligence, mislabeling, and knowingly endangering consumers. Some cases resulted in confidential settlements, while others forced the companies to tweak their marketing strategies. Yet the industry remained largely untouched, too powerful, too well-connected, too profitable. Health organizations speak out. Medical organizations, from the American Academy of Pediatrics to the World Health Organization, began issuing stark warnings. They urged governments to restrict marketing to minors, impose caffeine limits per serving, and require clear labeling about health risks. Studies showed that mixing energy drinks with alcohol created a toxic combination, reducing perceived intoxication while intensifying dehydration and cardiac stress. The message from doctors was, unequivocal: energy drinks are not safe for children and adolescents, and excessive consumption poses serious risks even for adults. Regulation on the horizon. Some governments took action. Lithuania became the first EU country to ban the sale of energy drinks to minors in 2014. Latvia followed. In the UK, major supermarkets voluntarily stopped selling them to children under 16. Elsewhere, Canada introduced maximum caffeine limits per serving and required warning labels. In Australia and New Zealand, regulators debated similar restrictions, citing public health concerns. But for every step forward, there was resistance. The energy drink industry poured millions into lobbying, warning that regulation would stifle innovation and limit consumer choice. In reality, these arguments echoed the same talking points once used by big tobacco and big sugar industries that had mastered the art of deflecting blame while maximizing profits. A public relations counterattack. To defend their empire, energy drink companies shifted their PR strategies. They emphasized personal responsibility, blaming consumers for overindulgence rather than acknowledging the inherent risks of their products. They highlighted charitable donations, environmental projects, and community sponsorships to soften their image. At the same time, they doubled down on cultural dominance, embedding themselves deeper into sports music and youth entertainment. For every negative headline about a collapsed teenager, there was a viral video of a Red Bull-sponsored skydiver breaking records. The corporations knew that controlling culture was more powerful than controlling science. The Global South, a new market. As scrutiny grew in the West, energy drink giants expanded aggressively into Africa, Asia, and Latin America. These regions, with weaker regulatory frameworks and younger populations, became prime targets. Billboards rose over crowded streets, and Red Bull logos appeared on soccer jerseys across Africa. Monster flooded markets in India, the Philippines, and Brazil, sponsoring concerts and extreme sports. The strategy was simple. If regulation in Europe and America tightened, profits could be recouped by cultivating new generations of consumers elsewhere. This global expansion raises ethical questions. Is it acceptable for multinational corporations to exploit weaker health protections in poorer countries, effectively shifting the burden of harm to populations less equipped to fight back? The battle between profit and public health. At the heart of the debate lies a fundamental conflict: the right of corporations to sell legal products versus the responsibility of governments to protect public health. Proponents of energy drink regulation argue that consumers, especially children, are being manipulated by predatory marketing and hidden risks. The industry counters that adults have the freedom to choose what they consume. But choice is never truly free. when billions of dollars are spent shaping perceptions, normalizing addiction, and obscuring dangers. The imbalance of power between corporate influence and public awareness makes the idea of choice complicated, if not illusory. The road ahead. So what does the future hold? Increasingly, public health advocates call for bold measures: age restrictions for purchasing energy drinks, mandatory prominent warning labels, strict caffeine limits per serving, transparency about ingredient blends, bans on marketing to minors, especially in schools and online platforms. Some go further, suggesting energy drinks should be taxed like cigarettes or alcohol, with revenues used to fund healthcare systems strained by preventable diseases. But as history has shown, regulation is not inevitable. It is a battle one fought between citizens, scientists, doctors, and governments on one side, and billion-dollar corporations with vast resources on the other. A closing reflection. Energy drinks are often sold as symbols of freedom, power, and rebellion. But in reality, they reveal something far more troubling: a system in which profit takes precedence over health. Corporations manipulate culture to mask danger, and governments struggle to keep pace with an industry that thrives on addiction. The story of energy drinks is not just about caffeine, sugar, or taurine. It is about the larger question of whether we as a society will allow corporate empires to dictate our choices, even when those choices come with hidden costs to our bodies, our communities, and our future. Because at the end of the day, an energy drink may give you wings. But the crash for individuals, for families, and for societies can be devastating. And the question we are left with is, will we act before it's too late? Or will we continue to drink, knowing that the wings we are promised may come at the cost of our health and perhaps even our lives?